Hi, everybody. My name is Max Furman. I'm an instructional designer with Learning and Organization Development. And I'm here today talking with one of our amazing consultants, Paul Axelrod, who just helped finish up the Manager as Advocate training series as part of our employee engagement programming. So we've asked him to talk about it. So you've got a recording. If you weren't able to attend, hopefully this will be helpful to you. We've got all the materials that accompanied the training online for you. So I'd like to hear how the training went and what do you think?
Great. Thank you, Max. Hello,
Sure.
everybody. Very pleased to be talking to you about this. Overall, I think the trainings went really well. It's sort of a new approach this year where we're focusing on this concept of advocacy as kind of like what is managing for engagement? And it really boils down to this word advocacy. And so the trainings really kind of revolved around that and helping managers understand, well, what does it mean to be a manager who's an advocate? And then doing a lot of experiential work in the trainings and the workshops, and then also just creating a lot of great conversation and discussions between managers in terms of what's worked best, what were some barriers that people experienced, and then what were some sharing ideas about how to overcome those barriers.
Great.
Anyway, I'm really glad to be talking to you and getting into this and telling you what it's all about. So should we just go ahead and dive in? Let's dive in. Okay, here we go. Feet first.
Okay.
All right. So, the basic idea was that we wanted to get participants, we wanted to get managers who are attending the workshops to experience what it is we were trying to teach, right? Make it a really experiential learning experience. So we had an icebreaker that was kind of framed the whole thing. And the icebreaker was based on an improv kind of act or routine called Write a Letter, right? And you and I, we're going to try it out.
Okay.
So the idea is that you partner with somebody who's sitting next to you. Well, that's you.
That's
okay,
us.
Great. So what we're going to do is we're going to write a letter. But here's the trick. We're going to take turns, and each one of us will say one word at a time.
Okay.
And we'll go back and forth.
All right.
Okay. Now there's some rules, and you can see the rules on the screen here.
Okay.
Basically, this is affirmative. So saying it's like accepting whatever your partner says.
Okay.
Not negating it or saying, well, I don't like that, or whatever. Just saying, okay, well, that's what he said. Now I'm going to respond with something new.
Okay.
Okay. Again, not trying to reject or evaluate or judge or removing all of that from your consciousness of what the other person is saying, and not exploring what was said. Like, well, why did you say that word? Not doing that, but just kind of going with it and just offering another word and seeing what happens.
Like stream of consciousness.
Kind of, but we're sharing it.
Okay.
It's kind of like a shared stream of consciousness.
Okay.
And then finally, the fifth rule is don't worry about it. You can't fail at this. It's improv. And we're really trying to be as open to outcome as possible. So, what we would say in the workshops is if you find that you and your partner are just looking at each other, scratching your heads, fine, okay, start over, no big deal. But or just keep going. So anyway, so let's try this out. Here's the prompt again. So we're gonna write a letter, and well, why don't you go first?
Who is this letter to?
Well, you can decide. Whatever you want.
Okay. Well, since this is about managers,
okay.
Dear manager.
Well, actually, just one word.
Oh, okay. Manager, :
Hi.
I first of all want to thank you.
Nope, just one word.
Oh, hi.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I
would
love
to
thank
you
for
all
the
red
tape
that
you
removed
from
my
job. Wow.
Yeah, exactly, right? It works.
Yeah.
You kind of just sort of, well, let me ask you.
Yeah.
So what happened?
I didn't expect to go there.
You didn't expect
because I had this preconceived idea of what I wanted to say, but it was just
that's right.
That's amazing.
You had this preconceived idea, but in participating in this kind of new form of communication, you just had to be really present, and then it took you to some unexpected place.
I love that.
That neither one of us really kind of determined, but we created it together.
Yeah. One word.
Yeah, one word at a time,
Okay.
and really just kind of listening and being present.
Okay.
That's the idea. That's what we were trying to experience there.
Okay. How fun.
Yeah, it was. And was it fun?
I bet people loved that.
People did like it.
Yeah.
So let me see if there were. Oh yeah. So okay. So that was the activity icebreaker. Get people to kind of connect with each other. one of the kind of lessons from it, or lessons, is that you kind of have to be open to outcome.
Okay.
Like anything can happen, right? And that's the idea. I mean, what I would ask people is, so don't look at the objectives yet. We're not there.
All right. All right.
What is this? How might this transfer to your role as a manager, your relationships as a manager? And what do you think people said?
Well, I've got to be present and listen.
Right. It's about not kind of imposing or assuming that your agenda is the relevant agenda, that what you're thinking about what your person is saying is really what they're intending to say, or where they see the conversation. It's really about being open. Okay. And so we want to kind of establish managing as advocate kind of on the groundwork of this sort of openness to the person for whom you're supposed to be advocating. Right. It's hard to advocate for someone if you can't hear them. You don't know who they are, what they want.
Or like I assumed what I wanted to say without even listening to you.
Sometimes it's a matter of helping them discover it.
Interesting.
Okay. So, all right. So open to outcome, right? But then I would turn to this slide and I say, but in this workshop, we do have outcomes. Right? Okay. So we're not completely loosey-goosey here. Right. So the objectives that we were trying to get across were to, in addition to this whole business about managers as advocates, is just kind of establish some baseline information about engagement at UCSF, and then getting into that business about what it is to be a manager who's an advocate, and then some self-assessment. Like where am I as a manager? Where am I in terms of my quote-unquote advocacy skills? And then developing some actions or some direction to become a better advocate, and learning from each other about things that work well to be an advocate when you're a manager, and then also sharing organizational resources that can help managers become more like advocates.
Okay.
So so this is the objective.
Okay.
All right. So UCSF state of engagement. We kind of want to go back to basics with this, which is that people do act differently when they're engaged. That's kind of like the basic premise. And typically people will act in positive ways, like differently in a positive way when they're engaged. That's why we care. That's why we care at all about it. Engagement has an impact on what people are actually doing when they're at work, right? And so we've got some examples here. People might be more willing to take on challenges, to stretch themselves, to question things, which can lead to better answers. Sometimes it leads to going above and beyond with discretionary effort. Sometimes it's just a matter of being a more pleasant person to be around, right? Which can affect the workplace, not just in terms of its mood, like people are happy or whatever, but it can help productivity too, because if you're the kind of person that I enjoy working with, I'm going to come to work every day. Right?
That's very true.
I'm going to think, well, it's a beautiful day. Gee, it'd be nice to be in the park. But you know what? Why would I do that? I like working with Max. I'm going to go ahead and work with Max.
That's true.
Right? So engaged people, their behavior is different in ways that really support us as an organization. Okay, so that's like the basic thing that you have to kind of like grasp with and why it matters. Now, we measure engagement, right? So that's a very experiential, qualitative way of describing staff engagement. Right? We quantify it so that we can do something about it. If you don't measure it, it's hard to know what to do about it. Okay, so every year we run this survey with the help of the Gallup organization to measure staff engagement. And I think it's important to differentiate between the measurement of engagement and engagement itself, right? So having top scores in the engagement survey is just a number, right? Engagement is a lived experience. Okay? And by measuring engagement, we can kind of know where to focus our energies to make the lived experience of being at work more, engaging.
Right. Enjoyable, more productive.
Well, so both, that's right. More fulfilling personally and more contributing organizationally. Okay, anyway, so the survey, most people are aware of this. It measures 12 statements that you're asked to agree or disagree with on a scale of 1 to 5. Okay, so 1 means I strongly disagree with the statement. 5 means I strongly agree with it. Okay, but why these 12 items? These 12 items have predictive power. Predictive power. So what that means is that the extent to which a team agrees or disagrees with these 12 statements predicts the level of performance of that team. Level of performance. So not just the numbers, like are they getting lots of stuff done, but performance, which also includes interpersonal effectiveness, right? Are they getting along? So not only are they productive, but also are they getting along? Do they like each other? Do they know what they're supposed to be doing? But all kinds of measures of team performance can be predicted by whether the extent to which they agree or disagree with 12 statements. And Gallup has tested these statements many, many times, and it's come down with specific wording which sorts out those high-performing teams from the low-performing teams. And I'll just take an example that I love to talk about, which is the 10th statement there, Q10. I have a best friend at work, right? So everyone else talking about that. It's very controversial. It's yeah. Anyway, so I love to talk about it too. I have a best friend at work. Sometimes people will say, well, why do they ask that? Like, why best friend, right? My best friend is, someone I went to school with and they live in, town. Look, that's fine. You don't have to have a best friend at work. But the thing is, groups that answer strongly to that statement, that agree with it, you can predict that they're higher performing teams. And then I would say, why do you think that's so? Right? Okay. So you start getting people to think, oh, well, maybe there is a connection between really liking the people I work with and the kind of work that we do. Right.
So it's the best friend in quotes, as opposed to you have, you're my emergency contact, whatever. It's just like, I like you.
It really,
we connect.
We connect. It's that sense of affiliation, that sense of affinity. And so, but getting back to the earlier point about, the exact wording of these statements, Gallup tested another version of this where it was more like, there's someone at work who I respect and trust, or something like that. It wasn't best friend. It was more like, well, that kind of thing. And, or I have a good friend at work. That doesn't sort out. There's no predictive power in that. There's no predictive power. There's no correlation between having a good friend at work or someone you respect and trust at work and the kind of performance that makes engaged teams stand out.
I see. Interesting.
But when you say best friend,
it's pretty loaded.
The groups that are willing to go that far, there's something special about that.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. And the same for all of the statements. The wording is very specific. Another one, just to point out real quick, is statement 4, Q4. In the last 7 days, I've received recognition. Okay, 7 days. It doesn't sort. That statement doesn't sort out the high performing from the low performing if you just say in the past month, or know what I'm saying.
Of course.
But within the last 7 days, then you start seeing a sorting effect on that statement. Okay. So anyway, 12 statements. That's how we measure engagement. If you don't measure engagement, you can't do anything about engagement. And the last thing to say about this is that you notice that the questions are sort of, we can see the design there, sort of a pyramid, right? And basically what that's getting at is that there are sort of 4 kind of dimensions or aspects of engagement that the statements kind of help us see. So the 4 layers, I guess. The bottom, something called basic needs. Am I getting what I need to do my work? Okay. Next level up is what do I get for who I am? Like when I give myself, right? When I show up as myself, what happens? Right? Is that a positive or a negative or neutral? Right. Next level up is do I belong? And then the top level is am I grown?
Of course.
So this is like 4 different, another kind of way to look at engagement is in terms of these 4 aspects of experience. Am I getting what I need? When I give of myself, what happens? Am I recognized? Am I appreciated? That sort of thing. Do I feel like I belong to something greater than myself? And then what's happening to me in terms of my potential. Okay. Anyway, so this is the core of the survey. It's worth pointing out that we've added supplemental questions to
that's right.
To this,
we did that.
Right?
That's new this year.
Right? Yeah, we keep it well. So we've had patient safety.
That's right.
Culture of patient safety questions in the past, but we are adding other, which will come up soon. On inclusion. Yeah. Right. Right. So the survey is actually greater than these 12 statements. And if you're confused about that, so, well, I thought there were 12. Yes, there are supplemental questions that relate to other topics we're interested in, aren't necessarily predictive of high performance in themselves.
I see. Interesting.
Okay. Shall we move on?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So how have we been doing as an organization? So what these bar charts, or what this shows, is starting in 2011 on the far left, okay, so that kind of navy blue bar, going through all the different times that we've run the survey to the gray, which is 2019,
Okay.
right? And it hasn't been yearly. I mean, lately it's been yearly, but we didn't do it yearly to begin with, so that's why there's only 7, right? Instances there. So what we see is that the grand mean, so the overall organizational score of those 12 statements, the average of those 12 statements on a scale of 1 to 5 was 3.6 the first time we ran the survey.
Okay.
Scale of 1 to 5. Then it started to go up. 3.72, 3.81, 3.86, 9.3, 9.4, 9.6. Okay, so one point to make about this is that it is directionally correct, like it's going up, which is great, really great. The caveat, I guess, is that from Gallup's perspective, based on their research, an organization the size of UCSF would want to see a change of 0.1 or greater in order to say that that was a meaningful change. 0.1. We didn't quite make that.
Yeah, I see that.
On several instances.
Okay.
So I'm looking at between the first and the second time we ran the survey. Yeah, that was good, right? Second and third time, not quite. Although I'll take it, right? But as you can see, as we kind of went along, we started to plateau. We've kind of hit this plateau in the 3.9s.
Got it.
Now, you know, I like to say, well, between 2011 and 2019, definitely meaningful change, right? It's a 0.36. It's awesome.
True.
But we want to make sure that we are kind of maintaining good momentum on this.
Okay.
And so what's concerning about this data or this visualization is that it shows that we need to find some way to get that kind of accelerated growth that we saw at the beginning, get it back. We're not ready to plateau. I mean, at some point you have to plateau, right? You can't have growth forever.
Okay.
But I think it's too early for us to be plateauing.
Right.
Right?
That makes
Scale of 1 to
sense.
5. I don't want to plateau at 3.9.
Of course.
Right? 4.5, 4. Something like that.
I got it.
Anyway, so that's what this is about. Okay, and then this is really important too. So many people, many members of the UCSF community have seen this at a town hall or town hall events. And what this shows is some research that we've done on trying to understand what is the variety or disparity of engagement within the UCSF community. So we can talk about UCSF's grand mean overall organizational score, right? 3.93 or 9.4, whatever it is. But that doesn't really tell us about the kind of experience of individual people at UCSF.
Right.
Okay? We want to drill down a little bit. And so we've done analysis on the data through the lens of diversity, of ethnic or racial diversity, and of kind of different labels that we use to kind of describe, a person's experience at UCSF. And I'll just say what these are. Okay, so one lens was, well, are you a manager or a non-manager? That's one lens through which to look at somebody's, experience here. Manager, non-manager. Large SOC, that stands for span of control. So are you in a group where there's a large span of control, which means are there more than 15 people reporting to one manager?
Okay.
Right? Think about that. One manager having to lead 15 people or more, and in many cases, it's a lot more. It's like 100 people. Or are you in a small span of control group? There's fewer than 15 people reporting to one manager.
And look at the difference.
Yeah, and I'll get right into that in a second. Yeah, so these are important. All right, ethnic or racial. So there's an opportunity to define yourself, self-identify in the survey. And the labels that seem to be most revealing are between white and Asian and Black and Hispanic. Okay? And then finally, the fourth lens is whether you are a represented staff or non-represented. And what we found in these four kind of lenses is that there's kind of a core and a periphery. There's a disparity between a core and a periphery. And the core groups, so that'd be manager, and or small span of control, and or white Asian, and or non-represented, have persistently higher levels of engagement. Or rather, we're measuring higher levels of engagement in those groups compared with non-manager, large span of control, Black or Hispanic, and represented, which are having a measuring persistently lower levels of engagement. And so what this slide shows is that gap, okay? So for example, looking at non-managers and managers, the grand mean for non-managers this past survey, 3.92. If you're a manager, it was 4.24. Okay? So quite a bit higher. Now, there's also a number in parentheses. You see that in italics, kind of parentheses. And what that shows is, how did that number change versus last year? So, good news is that non-managers actually saw their grand mean go up by 0.02.
Okay.
Managers was level.
Nice.
What that suggests is that the net disparity shrank a little bit.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, okay.
It does.
So the gap is narrowing a little bit.
Right.
I mean, not a lot, but a little bit between managers and non-managers. Looking at small span of control, large span of control, you can see the same, the same kind of cut on the data there.
Okay.
Small span of control, grand mean, this year was 4.04. Large span of control, 3.84. Again, that gap, the disparity, but well, both groups saw their scores go up. But the large span of control, which is the group we're more concerned about, they saw their scores go up even more than the small span of control group. Okay? So net, that gap also narrowed. White Asian, Black Hispanic, same thing. The grand mean for White Asian, 3.99, Black Hispanic was 3.85. So there's that disparity, there's that gap. But what happened to that gap last year to this year? Well, it narrowed as well. White Asian, that score did go up a little bit, 100th the point. Black Hispanic went up 0.04. All right, so net, the gap narrowed, and then finally represented and non-represented, same deal, 3.85 versus 4.12, and represented staff saw their scores go up just a little bit, but it went up, right? So, I mean, we'll take it, right?
Yeah,
okay.
right.
Especially, think about what was going on this year with represented staff. What's the word?
The strikes.
Yeah, lots of strikes.
Yeah,
lots of strikes, and still. So that's the scores went up just a tiny bit.
I see.
So I say appreciate good stuff wherever you see it.
Sure.
Right. Anyway, there's a lot more work to do on this. Even though there's been some kind of net narrowing of the gap between these different groups, there's a lot more work to do. We don't want there to be any disparity between managers, non-managers, white, Asian, black, regardless of how you identify yourself or what your position is in the organization. There shouldn't be a disparity.
Okay.
It makes no sense. I mean, there's no reason for it. Of course, we don't want that. And so, as a result of this data, particularly looking at the racial, ethnic, or the racial cut on it, the white, Asian, and Black, Hispanic, the organization as a whole has adopted an action plan to carry us through, well, it started last year, it's a four-year plan, carrying us through 2022. Okay. Right? So we're actually in the kind of the second year of it. And the organizational action plan focuses really specifically on this gap, the engagement disparity between Black, Hispanic, and white Asian. And the organizational action plan has three actions, three tactics, if you will. And that's what this slide is getting at. So one tactic is a roadmap to navigate UCSF. So I guess I should back up a little bit. One of the things that we did after these results came out and we saw, wow, there's a disparity here, is what we held we had focus group meetings. Right. Focus groups, right? Yeah. Gallup helped us with that. So they brought in folks to meet with all these different kind of cuts, a Black Hispanic, the large span of control, the represented, and so forth, and do focus groups. Say, what's going on? What is it like to work here? What's your experience like? And based on the feedback from those focus groups, the organization, by which I mean Chancellor Hallgood, his cabinet, kind of the highest levels, said, all right, we got to do something about this. We need to be responsive. Here's an action plan. And the action plan basically addresses the experiences that were kind of revealed, that were heard in those focus groups. Roadmap to navigate UCSF is one of those action plans, one of those responsive items. And it has to do with giving people a sense that they have a future at UCSF, that there is a road ahead for me within the organization, okay? That I'm not in a dead end, right? So part of that is realizing what my my strengths are. I'm kind of reading from the slide here. Realizing, well, what contribution do I have? And knowing that you do have a contribution. Everybody has a contribution to make. Everybody has some talent or potential strength to contribute to the organization. Okay. It's also enhancing our ability, enhancing our communication about opportunities and events and activities that can further a person's career at UCSF.
Sure.
Because, you know, there's a lot of pockets of really neat things going on at UCSF that speak to career development and so forth. Yeah. But do we always know about them? No. So as an organization, we need to do better to communicate those things that are going on. And then finally, sharing paths for growth and professional development. What is my next step? Right? I'm an administrative analyst. What's next for me? Okay. So sharing that kind of information. And what classes do I need to take? What opportunities are there that will help me? And so forth. So it's knowing what I'm good at and what's my contribution. It's learning about events and activities that are going on in the organization. And it's having a kind of a path, a career path, if you like, for me in my position, given who I am and what I'm interested in, that can take me to the next step. Okay. I'm talking fast. Stop me if you want. Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah. The second tactic or action item is addressing unconscious bias and microaggressions. So what are these? Unconscious bias is essentially, well, it's unconscious, things that we're not aware of that lead us to act in ways that effectively prefer one group over another group. So you may not be aware of it, but your choice of who to hang out with, your choice of who you recruit, your choice, all kinds of things may inadvertently have the effect of giving some people preference over others. And so this does show up in recruitment and hiring, where recruitment committees or hiring committees aren't aware of their unconscious bias, which lead them to look at the some candidates more favorably than others based on, could be race, could be gender, could be all kinds of things. So addressing unconscious bias. Microaggressions, what's that? That's also unconscious. Those are the kind of things you're unaware of that you say or do that have the unintended effect of someone else feeling like they don't really belong. Right? Somebody says something or does something, and it just makes you feel like an outsider. Right? And again, the important thing is that these are unconscious. But the microaggressions is different from the examples I gave earlier of the unconscious bias, and that they're kind of like everyday things. And each one seems kind of small, maybe. Like somebody says something, or they do something, or who knows what it is. It's kind of small on its own, but over time they build up. It becomes a pattern. And it becomes like, yeah, here we go again.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
And it makes me feel like I just don't want to participate, right? Or I don't really belong, or this place really isn't for me.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, so dealing with those is another action area. And then the action area on top there, the top of the screen is, and I can't read it because we have but I think it's basically what we're talking about today. Managers as advocates. That's what it says, advocates. You got it there?
Let's see.
Almost.
One more.
Yeah. There we go. Managers as advocates, right?
Okay,
and that is, okay, this is really cool and exciting. It's reframing what it means to be a manager at UCSF. It's not just a question of reacting to everything that's in your inbox and making sure you got it under control.
Yeah.
No, it's much more than that. It's having a sense of purpose, and part of your purpose is to ensure that your team is living and growing, that people do feel like they belong. They know they belong, right? And because of the way you treat them, the way you talk to them, the opportunities that you make available to them, the kind of way you set them up for success, no matter what their experience is. So somebody new to the organization, you know, the way you set them up for success is very different from the way you set up for success somebody who's been around for a long time, right? For a new person needs to learn a lot and be directed and so forth and so on. Someone who's been here a long time, ready for something new. Well, you know, you can help them as well. Okay, so this is exciting because it really gets to our whole kind of concept of what is it to be a leader at UCSF? What is it to be a manager? And this is coming from the highest level of the organization.
Yeah.
We need to kind of refresh or enhance our concept of being a manager. Yes, it's all the task stuff. It's being responsive.
Right.
It's, you know, making sure the work gets done, and it's making sure that people know that they belong, that you're advocating for their success.
Okay. And that's why we're here.
And that's exactly why we're here. That's
Yeah.
the workshop.
Great.
All right. So there's your background.
Okay. Got it.
Okay. So shall we move forward?
Yeah.
All right. But there's more.
Okay.
Okay.
There's always more.
There's always more. All right. So so understanding belonging at UCSF. What does that refer to? The focus groups revealed that there are groups or populations within UCSF who you could just sort of generalize by saying don't feel like they belong, or don't feel like they belong as much as other groups feel like they belong. Right? For example, I can walk into just about any setting at UCSF and feel like I belong there.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Male, white, highly educated, right? I feel pretty comfortable in just about any environment that I encounter at UCSF.
Okay.
Not everybody has that experience.
Right.
Based on gender, based on racial identity, based on education, based on all kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
Religion. I mean, it could be anything.
Yeah.
But that's what we're getting at, is when we talk about belonging.
Okay.
Do you feel like you belong at UCSF? Are you kind of in the mix? I mean, is this your place?
Yeah.
Right? Is this for you?
Right.
Is UCSF for you? And so that's kind of how we're boiling down this whole kind of business about diversity and the gap, the engagement, the disparity between, say, white, Asian, and Black, Hispanic. We're trying to get at in terms of belonging, the experience of belonging, and we want to understand how to increase the sense of belonging at UCSF. And we're doing that. We're measuring it. So once again, measuring so that we can change. The way we're measuring belonging is by looking at 4 specific items on the engagement survey itself, the Q12. Mm-hmm. And those 4 items you can see there. Q4 is in the past 7 days, someone has recognized me for doing good work. Q5, somebody at work seems to care about me as a person. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Q7, at work my opinions seem to count. Mm-hmm. And Q12, in the past 12 months, I've had opportunities to learn and grow.
Sure.
Why these questions? Those are the questions which show the most kind of persistent disparity between white, Asian, and Black, Hispanic. Those questions in particular.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. It's strange, but interesting. Okay, next, roadmap. So we're asking questions. You mentioned earlier there's supplemental questions. Mm-hmm. You observed that. Yeah. So there's a couple of questions about the roadmap. You see, this is tying with the action plan. Mm-hmm. So how are we doing on the roadmap? Well, people are asked to agree or disagree. Can I find information and resources that I need to be effective? Mm-hmm. Is there a clearly defined path for my development and growth? Okay, that's on the survey now. Mm-hmm. Manager advocate, remember, that's also an action area. Question, my manager is a strong advocate for our unit and department. Mm-hmm. Right, flat out asking people, is your manager an advocate? Yeah. That's going to tell us. Yeah. Okay, second question or statement, my manager consistently helps me progress in that role. And then that third action item area, but unconscious bias, my progression. So we're asking about that too. Well, how do you ask about that? It's a little tricky. But the way we're getting at it is by saying, statement, agree or disagree, I am respected for who I am as a person. And I have the same opportunity for advancement as others with similar experience and qualifications. That can reveal the existence or non-existence of some of those implicit bias issues that I mentioned earlier. Okay. So these are all statements or questions that are on the survey. Mm-hmm. They were on it this year. People responded to those statements. And so our baseline, you're gonna have to get me that page again. Oh, I see it here. Okay, we're good. So our baseline score, which is the average of all of these questions, is 3.84. What's right here?
Oh, got it.
3.84 on a scale of 1 to 5. That's what we're calling our overall belonging index. Okay. So if people really felt like they belong, doesn't matter who you are, what you look like, all that kind of stuff, 5.0, right? Okay. And that's what we want. Right now we're at 3.84. Next year, we're going to look at the score again to see if any of our organizational action plan has addressed the issues. Right. Okay.
And the hope is that we go up 1.1.
Well, what we're saying, what we know is that a meaningful change has got to be 0.1 or greater.
I got it.
0.1. So at least 3.94.
Okay.
You ready?
That's a big goal.
You gonna? Shall we do it?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right. There's more data.
Okay.
When will this end? I don't know.
I don't know.
It's almost done.
How many more pages?
Yeah. Because like in the workshops, I kept, apologizing. Okay, I'm still talking. Yeah, don't worry, you're going to be talking soon. I think this is towards the end of where I'm talking. All right, finally, even though
establishing the background.
Oh, there's so much background. There's so much of it.
Okay.
I know. So this one, even though there's an organizational action plan, right, that the chancellor is sponsoring, individual managers, individual work groups still have a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
And basically, individual managers are responsible for three basic things, so accountability they're accountable for three things.
Okay.
Sharing the results with their teams. Number one.
Of the Gallup survey.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And number two, leading an effective action planning process. Talking about the results. What do they mean and what do you want to do?
Right.
Okay. Third, helping the team make progress.
Yeah.
Those three things.
Towards the action plan.
Sorry. Yeah. And so these are also on the survey. Did my manager share the results? Was I part of the process? And did we make progress? Those questions are on the survey too.
Okay.
And if you average out people's responses to those questions, you get something called the accountability index. Right? It's the average of those three questions. Responses to those three statements.
Right.
And what this data shows here on this slide is that there's a correlation between the responses that teams are giving to these three questions and their engagement score. Lo and behold, looking at the far right, groups that answer very strongly to those three questions, got the results, part of the process, made progress, they're answering 4.01 or greater. So that's basically agree or strongly agree. Their engagement score, their grand mean, tended to go up on average by 0.13. Not bad. On the other end of the spectrum, groups that answered very weak on that, right? Answering answering 2 or lower, so that's basically I disagree or strongly disagree, their scores on average dropping by 0.39.
Wow.
Yeah. It's huge. Look at that. Look at the gap between those two, 0.39 negative to 0.13 positive.
Okay.
Right? That's a huge range.
It's a big gap.
It's a big gap.
Okay.
But the thing is, I don't mean to diminish the effort, but it's not that hard. I mean, it's hard to make change, yes? Yeah. It's not that hard to share results. It's not that hard to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, it's hard to make progress, but it's not hard to show that you're trying to make progress.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is what we call the low-hanging fruit. Every manager should at least be doing those three things.
Okay.
And unfortunately, we've only got I forget what the percentage is, 20 or 30% of managers, of groups having action plans. No, I mean, and this is just a huge opportunity for us as an organization. Now, okay, granted, not every group maybe sort of entered their action plan into the system, so we didn't know about it. That's possible. But in any event, there's a lot of people who are giving pretty weak answers to the statements. I got the results, part of the process, and made progress towards the action plan. I mean, for whatever reason, there's a lot of people saying, disagree, strongly disagree even. Right? And I'd be curious about that.
That's my job as a manager, not my ambassador's job.
Well, so
it's our job.
It's our job. So the manager has a great opportunity so the manager gets access to the results. Okay. The manager has kind of the opportunity to share the results in team meetings, staff meetings, whatever it is. Right. And the manager often has access to resources to leverage to help make progress. Right. Now, the ambassador is also really, I'm glad you mentioned it. The ambassador is great. Yeah. It's really, really well situated to help with this because the ambassador is kind of like the glue, right? And it's kind of networking with everyone in the department. It has the opportunity to sort of get people interested and curious. Hey, come to the staff meeting. This one you got to come to because we're looking at the results. Okay. So, stuff like that. So I really see it as a partnership between the ambassador and the manager.
Yeah, very much.
Do you agree?
I 100%.
Yeah, great. Okay, so that's that.
Okay.
Any questions?
Makes sense.
All right. So here's the summary. Participation increased this year. We got 72% participation rate, UCSF overall, and a slight increase in the engagement score, that grand mean, organizational grand mean. Nevertheless, even though that's positive, there's still two distinct layers of engagement at UCSF. And so this core and this periphery, the gaps become a little bit smaller, but we're still seeing a significant disparity, engagement disparity. And so we need to, as an organization, we need to continue to address the kind of this disparity. And we're doing that through this belonging index and by really paying attention to whether or not people feel like they belong here. And let's also keep our eye on the low-hanging fruit of the accountability index, share the results, lead a process, and try to make some progress on the process, or on the action.
That makes sense.
Okay, good.
All right.
Whew. All right, so this is where we would take a break. But we don't need to take a break.
We're not taking a break.
Let's keep going.
We're going. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So this is where we kind of switch to like, wow, that's a lot of information. What do I do?
Yeah.
Well, the first thing to do is to assess yourself, right? Understand yourself. Where are you in terms? And remember, our focus really is on managers as advocates.
Yeah.
So let's just like help people with that, right? So let's set aside roadmap and the implicit bias microaggressions for a second. Let's just look at managers as advocates and start with like your self-assessment. So here, I would ask a question to the group, to the participants in the workshop. What does it mean to be an advocate for your staff? So what would you say if I?
Oh man. I mean, do I have the best interests of my team as my priority? I mean, that's the pull, right?
Okay.
I mean, I've got these deliverables,
Sure.
I've got things to do, but it's, I have to be supportive of my team.
Okay, great. So somebody for whom it is a priority to, what did you say? It's a priority that
to support my team.
Supporting my team.
Yeah,
okay, great.
Yeah.
So we get lots of statements like this. We get, solving problems, maybe, or maybe it's connecting with people, or lots of things. It's currently the ideal.
Right.
Right. We're just saying, what would it be? What would it be to be an advocate?
Right.
All these kind of really great statements. Okay, there's that. And then the next question was, well, what are your barriers? What are the barriers that prevent you from living up to that ideal?
Yeah.
And so what do you think people said?
We're so busy.
Busy.
Yeah.
Time. Give me more hours.
Yep. Not enough time in the day.
Not enough time in the day. So I had to deliver some bad news about that, which is that there will never be more hours in a day.
I've heard that before.
Yeah. So unfortunately, that's not going to be the solution.
Okay.
But then I might, in some cases, I ask, well, is it that you need more time, or is it a question of priority?
That's it.
Right? Do you need someone to give you permission or insist that your staff is your priority?
Okay.
And would that sort of help you find time?
Right.
So you can say, all right, I'm not going to do this because I'm doing this now.
Right.
And I have the
Or
blessing of the
delegate.
manager.
Or sharing whatever.
Right.
Sharing
Exactly. Delegate.
responsibility.
And is your manager being an advocate for you
Right.
by allowing you to delegate the stuff that's preventing you from
Yeah.
being an advocate?
Because I can't do everything. Not one person can do it all. That's
Exactly.
why we have teams.
That's why we have teams.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's why we're here.
That's right.
Right?
To help each
If I
other.
didn't need anybody, I wouldn't be here.
That's right.
But I need people.
That's right.
Good. All right. So that was that. So what are the barriers? We discussed that. And then the final question was, what are the things that help or support you to serve as an advocate? So what are some of the things that would help you overcome the barrier to get closer to that ideal?
I need to be able to talk to my team.
Okay.
I need to be able to tell them this is what's going on.
Sure.
These are priorities.
Okay.
This is where I need help. I need to be able to give them the flexibility to do their thing.
What do you need for yourself?
I need to take care of myself.
Okay, so that's a big one.
Yeah,
What else?
I need to be able to ask for help,
Okay,
ask for what I
that's
need,
right. Great.
to be able to say, I can do this, but I need this. I need additional information.
Sure,
I need
yep.
additional resources.
Yep.
I need to be able to have that kind of interaction and trust that if I do say I'm asking for help, it's not a reflection on me being a failure.
No one's going to say, why are you asking for help for?
It's
Right?
like you've given me this task and
Exactly.
I've got X, Y, and Z, but I need another piece.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the process in the workshop.
Yeah.
What I suggest that our viewers do is so reflect on these yourself. So these 3 questions. What is an manager advocate ideally? What are the barriers that prevent me from living up to that ideal, from practicing that ideal? And then third, what could kind of support me or serve me to overcome those barriers?
Yeah.
So reflect on that for yourself. And then I would say engage in a conversation with your peers, other managers,
Yeah.
or with your manager themselves.
Yeah, because I would imagine, if I didn't engage with my peers, I would feel very isolated.
Definitely. And that actually comes up.
Upstream.
You feel like
know.
and you feel like you're the only one.
Right.
And it's not true.
Yeah.
You're not the only one.
That's right.
This is shared.
It is shared.
Right? And it's a tragedy that people kind of go through their days and their years thinking they're the only ones that are quote unquote failing.
That's right.
But they're not.
It's a big organization.
It's big, and we're all in the same system.
That's right.
So we all kind of experience it in some way.
Yeah.
Experience the pressures and the barriers.
Sure.
Right? We're all experiencing that at the same time. Anyway, so this is what I would suggest for anyone who's watching this recording. Take note of these questions. Can I get them all? I don't think I can get them all on the screen at the same time.
Yeah.
There's that one. What does it mean to be an advocate ideally? What are the barriers that prevent me from that ideal, keep me from that ideal? And then what do I need, essentially? What do I need?
Yeah.
And then being able to self-advocate.
Right.
So starting by being an advocate for yourself.
Well, that's what they say, right? You put the oxygen mask on yourself
put your
first.
then the person next to you. Yeah.
That's right.
So yeah, that's funny. Okay, so that's what that was about. And then the way that we so that was really great because it got managers talking to each other just on the basis of what they know.
Okay.
It was kind of an informal conversation, unstructured. I didn't know what was going to come out of it.
Yeah.
Very organic, very much, state of the knowledge of the group in the room.
Okay.
Okay, which is great, important, right?
Yeah.
So then we supplemented that with some more structured information based on research that we did as a department with primarily with a group called the Corporate Executive Board, now known as Gartner.
Oh, of course.
And they do a lot of research on all kinds of issues that organizations face, but in particular, also engagement and inclusivity, which we kind of thought, well, that gets us towards belonging, right? If you belong, you can call that an inclusive environment. You feel like you belong. And so we developed, on the basis of this research, we created or came up with or are sharing a competency model for an inclusive leader. Competencies are just behaviors or outcomes that show you've been successful in your job. Okay. So what does it mean to be successful? Like what kind of behavior or outcomes would you expect if you were to say somebody was successful at creating an inclusive work environment where everybody belongs? Well, we kind of have some guidelines here.
Yeah.
So again, the point was to supplement what people are coming up with on their own, that informal conversation, discussions that they just had, and saying there's some kind of research-based guidelines as well. 5 aspects of leadership behavior that you would associate with being successful as an inclusive leader. Interpersonal integrity, network management, leader growth mindset, team accountability, and productive conflict. And so then what we did was we went through each of these, and so here I'll just make a point about one or 2 points about each one. So interpersonal integrity, it's being able to listen, right? Remember at the beginning we did a listening exercise.
That's right.
Really listening and seeing where people are going with what they have to say, and not assuming that before they say it. And then that's consistency between between people and the way you make decisions or interact with people. And it's really letting people know that you want to hear, regardless of whether it's good or bad.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're not gonna shoot the messenger.
Right.
Right.
Right. Of course.
People can trust you.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's that. Interpersonal integrity, network management. So this is really cool. That first bullet point: sharing performance results and positive feedback with the department. So when your team member does something great, share it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let it be known.
Yeah. Do recognitions. We do recognitions.
We do recognition. We do. We do recognition and within our meeting. Do them outside of our meetings.
Oh, okay.
That's what this is. So when our manager goes to her team meeting, share it.
Okay.
Share what you heard or share what you observed.
Got it.
Be an advocate. That's really being an advocate.
For the team.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and particularly when there's something that really stands out. Something a result that you really want to. Because your team members don't get those opportunities.
No.
They're doing their work.
That's right.
And they probably know their peers.
Yeah.
Right, and can talk about their work with their peers.
Yeah.
But they don't know, if you're a manager, they don't know your peers.
That's right.
They're not
going to the manager meeting.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's true.
So that's really, I think, a critical part of network. It's helping people network when they're not there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. That's why this is network management.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some of it is also getting people into those meetings and into those rooms. So saying, here's an opportunity to kind of join a committee or be part of a group or whatever it is, so that they can connect with other people. And also just sharing resources that UCSF makes available to help them get plugged in.
Okay.
Okay, so there's that one. Leaders growth mindset. So that's kind of like the way so how do you respond when somebody either does something really well or does something that doesn't meet your expectations? So when they do something really well, are you thinking, oh, well, good, they're fine, I can ignore them. Right?
Right.
No, you don't. It's not, and it's not very helpful for them. Right. It's not growth oriented, right? So somebody does something really well, it's like, oh, what do I need to do to make sure that keeps happening and at ever higher levels?
Yeah.
Okay? And then what about when they do something that doesn't meet your expectations? It's like, oh, well, I guess, they're just they got a problem.
Yeah.
Or is it, what do they need that they don't have? And that's a really broad question.
Sure.
It could be something like a piece of equipment or a tool.
Right.
Like they have the capability,
right.
But they just don't have the tools to do it. Or maybe they're in a position that's not bringing out what they have to contribute.
Of course. Makes sense.
Okay. Growth mindset is always looking at what happens in terms of how can this experience lead to growth?
Yeah. And I love the second one, give team members autonomy to determine, because I love that, because I'm an experienced professional. It's like, give me the job, let me figure it out, I'll give it back, we can tweak it, modify it, but let me run with it. I don't need to micromanage
so
it because it's deflating.
It's so deflating. So this is a really great example, Max, of how depending on where your team member is in the kind of the tenure of their job. What I mean by that is, are they new to the job? Are they a young career, as if they've never done this before in their lives? Or have they been around a while and they're experts? Okay, depending on that, you'll take different approaches.
Of course.
So the first thing to say is, give autonomy when it's appropriate.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't mean that they're not going to struggle. Sometimes autonomy is the learning.
Sure, that's right.
How to be autonomous.
That's right.
Especially if you've never had the opportunity before.
Right.
So there's going to be some like, ooh, well, what do I do with this autonomy?
But that's the time I have to have the trust in you to ask you for help.
That's still growth. That's learning.
Got it.
Okay. So that's one thing. And the other thing that I want to say about this was, it's good for you as a manager to let go.
That's right. Instead of controlling everything and micromanaging.
And I get it. I understand. You want things done just right. But it's keeping you back.
Yeah.
It's keeping you back.
Yeah, it's exhausting for the manager. It's too much.
You'll thank yourself if you learn how to delegate.
It's too much.
And if you learn how to give people autonomy appropriately.
Yeah.
It'll allow you to rise to a higher level of responsibility.
And allows the staff to rise to a higher level because they get more responsibility.
It's good for everyone.
Not necessarily all more work, but it's like, I've got this really big, great project and I want you to be a part of it. How exciting is that?
It's very exciting. Yeah, it's great. Assuming that it's part of the staff members' goals. Something they're actually interested in.
Exactly.
Okay. So team accountability, holding team members accountable for. Okay. So actually, you know what I did with this one? We're not on a limb. I actually went to number 5 first.
Okay.
Productive conflict. Do your team members, are they able and willing to have unfiltered disagreement?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Are they willing to stick their neck? Are they willing to question and challenge? Responsibly and intelligently.
Sure.
When it comes to making decisions that affect their work. If they are, if you've created an environment, if you have contributed to a work environment where people are willing to disagree with each other, stick their necks out. Not only will you make better decisions, because you'll get the best of that person's perspective and the best of that person's perspective, and you'll make sure that there's no stone left unturned. Okay, not only will you make better decisions, but, and now I'm going to slide 4. This one. People will hold themselves accountable. Why? Because they've been heard.
Yeah.
Because the decision they had input. The decision may not have been what they initially or what they would have chosen to do, but they were part of the process.
But that is a risk. It's
risky.
Big and scary.
It's big and scary. So that's why I put number 5. I put this first.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. Where you have productive conflict, you're more likely to get buy-in to the decisions that are made. Where you have buy-in, then accountability is not a big deal.
Sure.
You're reminding each other of what everybody agreed on this decision, the hypothetical decision.
Right.
And so you want to be held accountable for it. You hold yourself accountable for it. It's your decision. The success of the team is your success. Instead, if they're not willing to engage in productive conflict, they hold back, say whatever, or I just don't know what to do.
Sure.
Nobody's going to hold people. They're not going to want to hold each other accountable. Yeah. It's going to be too uncomfortable. Right. And so then who gets to hold people accountable?
Well, the manager.
The manager.
It's all about.
That's not what we want.
Yeah, that's right.
That's not an organic team.
Yeah.
That can take care of itself.
It's too much.
It's too much, and so anytime that a team needs external intervention.
Yeah.
To hold itself accountable, you've got a problem.
Right.
But where it holds itself accountable, that's beautiful.
It is beautiful. We have that here.
We do.
We're lucky.
Well, we do, and I want to say it's never ending.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Growth never ends.
Yeah.
This is all part
I
of
hope
growing.
not. Yeah. Yeah. Because otherwise, it would be boring.
It's being willing to engage in conflict.
Yes.
So that productive conflict. Yes. So that the accountability makes sense.
But you know what? I believe the manager has to create. It comes from the top. has to create a safe space to support conflict.
I agree.
You know, otherwise, you know, I feel like I'm just running around protesting, right? And
Right.
complaining.
Right.
You know, but I mean, we've got a manager who encourages us to agree, disagree, what's your opinion, how do you say more. I said this last year when I did this with David, that the most favorite thing I love from our boss, Nancy Duranto, is she always says, say more. Just those 2 words.
Yeah, say more. Right.
Say more. When someone speaks and there's not clarity, say more.
Yeah.
It's an incredible thing. It is.
Okay, so these are the 5 kind of competencies associated with being an inclusive leader. How are we doing with time?
We're good.
Okay.
We're good.
So where do we need to end?
We probably
about 10 more minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's right.
Okay, so so then what we had was an assessment that we handed out, and kind of a checklist of behaviors.
And that's online, by the way. That's on the website where this recording can be found. You'll see the checklist. Okay, great.
Yeah. So the way this works is you go through the checklist and you just mark off areas of the competencies of these inclusive leader competencies where you want to spend more time.
Okay.
Subjective, you know, it's not a science. It's just like, where do you think you want to spend a little more effort?
Right.
And then what we did is we had people get together. Before I get to this, we had people get together and share the results of their assessments.
Okay.
Say, I'd like to work more on being a better listener. I'd like to work more on, you know, speaking up for my staff.
What were the common things that people said?
Oh, I can't remember.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean,
that was all over the place.
It was really all over the map.
Okay.
And then people get together in small groups and kind of share. Well, this is what I've done. This is what I've seen work.
Okay.
And that sort of thing. So again, for our viewers now, take the assessment and then bring it to when you meet with your peers, when you meet with your manager. You know, take the next step to kind of, or contact us if you want ideas.
It's a self-evaluation.
It's a self-evaluation.
Would I want to give that to my team to do?
You could. Yeah,
I could.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like a 360 kind of thing.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, hand it out.
Okay. Let the team kind of see what, get it back and. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Okay. All right. So we've got that on the website for you. So if you look at the materials with the PowerPoint deck of this, you can download that and use it as a tool.
Yeah. Good. Okay. And I would say that I'm not really intrigued by this idea. If you ask your staff to fill it out, share the results with them.
Yes.
Right. You got to do that.
Point.
You got to do that. You can't say, "Oh, it's my secret."
That's right. You got to be vulnerable.
You got to be vulnerable and show that it's okay to see somebody as needing, or it's okay to say that somebody needs to grow, including you.
That's right. Right, because again, you know, the responsibility of a manager is so immense, but they're a person, they're human. Totally. They're just, so get them off the pedestal. It's like we're all growing. We're all growing.
Yeah. Totally. That's very true. Okay, very good. So then we ended with this pointing people to additional resources online. So our website, learning.ucsf.edu/employee engagement. Beautiful website, Max.
Well, thank you.
Yes,
we just upgraded it.
It looks great.
So, thank you. You're featured prominently.
Well, I'm sorry about that.
I took pictures we just did a staff retreat, and I wanted some stock photos. So I took pictures while we were at the staff retreat. And so if you go to our new website, you'll see us.
You can't escape us.
You can't escape us.
Okay.
We're everywhere.
So go there, go to that and then I guess we have a sort of a shortened version of that. Is that the same thing?
Yes.
Okay, great. And there you'll see, and then you'll find contents, listed them here, engagement resources to help you action plan with your teams, skill building, professional development programs to help you with your own skill development, but also the development of your team members. Information on our mentoring program. You want to do a little pitch on that?
Sure. We started a mentoring program. Actually, Paul was my subject matter expert. We built a mentoring program, which we've had, I guess, for 3 years now. We piloted it in this department, Learning and Organization Development. We've expanded it into HR. It's now being implemented in 12 different departments throughout campus and Med Center.
Cool.
Contact me. The information's on the website if you're interested in rolling out a peer-to-peer mentoring program. It isn't like you don't have to build a mentoring team. It's we were mentors. We mentor each other.
Peer-to-peer.
Peer-to-peer. So it's an incredibly engaging opportunity. It changed a lot of things in this department. It gave people an opportunity to get to know each other on a different level. And I personally believe it did increase our engagement scores a little bit. Sure. Yeah, it changed the environment quite a bit. It's a lot more personal to get to know people. So I'm happy to help.
Yeah, and on that note, I mean, it could show up in your engagement results in surprising ways.
Yeah.
It's not just about liking people, becoming friends with them. It may affect that.
No.
But it might also affect other measures, including one that comes to mind is that there's a statement. It's my colleagues or my coworkers are committed to doing quality work.
That's right.
That Gallup has found is an indicator of trust.
Yes. Interesting.
I just believe that you're doing quality work without having to check up on you.
Yeah.
Well, if you are doing this peer mentoring thing, you're getting to know people, you're learning about their work.
Yeah.
And so then you develop a picture of them. It's like you're more likely to say, oh yeah, I'm sure they're probably doing quality work.
Yeah.
Because you know them at work.
Right.
And so this can build trust.
Yep.
And anyway, it can
and
show
I
up
want to know what you do.
Right.
So the really nice part is I get to show what a day in the life is for me, and you get to show, and then perhaps you can help me with a project or give me recommendations of a TED Talk or a book or an article or even just kind of be a sounding board.
It just creates connections.
It's fabulous. Yeah, it's been really successful.
So you'll find that information.
That's on the website.
Okay, great. Our email address for questions related to engagement, you'll also see on the screen there. Is this the last slide?
I think it is.
More?
This is it.
Well, let me just see.
It's the end.
It's the end.
All
That's
right.
us. So anyway, I talked a lot.
It was great.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Questions, just let us know.
Let us know.
Download the slides and use them as a reference and a resource for yourself. Is there anything else I need to say?
Thank you so much for doing this.
My great pleasure.
Again, I really wanted to make sure that those who couldn't attend in person had the opportunity to get the information, not only from a deck, but a conversation.
Right.
So you at least have that information.
I dominated the conversation.
But as you should, because you're the subject matter expert, and
okay.
you know, I'm an ambassador with our department along with Miriam Leong.
Yes.
And again, stay tuned for the website. You'll see we're planning new the ambassador summits on the calendar for the fall.
Cool.
And we're going to be doing the town hall in January 2020. That's already on the calendar.
Fabulous.
So we're doing engagement all year long. Remember, engagement isn't just a survey.
Right.
Employee engagement happens all year long.
That's right.
So thank you for watching and thank you for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to do it. Thanks a lot, Max.
Thank you, Paul. Okay. All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.